God, and he's just mourning in his soul. And this is verse 11. It says, O Lord, I beseech thee, let now thine ear be attentive to the prayer of thy servant, and to the prayer of thy servants, who desire to fear thy name and prosper, I pray thee. Thy servant this day, and grant him mercy in the sight of this man, for I was the king's cupbearer. So, I looked up cupbearer on Wikipedia, because that's where I learned everything. And a cupbearer in those days not only just bared the cup to the king, but he also tasted the wine to make sure it wasn't poisoned. So it was a pretty valued job, especially for Nehemiah to be the king's cupbearer. But it was also dangerous because he was drinking potential poison every day. So then I'm going to skip down to chapter 2 and just read the first two scriptures. And it came to pass in the month Nisan, in the 20th year of, I don't know how to say this, but you can read it, the king, that wine was before him, and I took up the wine, and gave it unto the king. Now I had not before time sat in his presence. And that's the key part I want to focus on today, but I'm going to read on just a little bit. Wherefore the king said unto me, Why is thy countenance sad, seeing thou art not sick? This is nothing else but sorrow of heart. Then I was very sore afraid, and said unto the king, Let the king live forever. Why should not my countenance be sad, when the city, the place of my father's sepulchres, lieth waste, and the gates thereof are consumed with fire? So at the end of verse 1 he said, Now I had not been before time sad in his presence. And that's, Dad was just speaking about it a second ago. But Nehemiah had this dangerous job. He was drinking wine all the time, but he was never sad in the king's presence. God had placed him there, under the king, to do a certain work, and he rejoiced in that work. He took pleasure in that work. And if you read on, you continue, it was because of his joy that he had, that when the real bad thing happened, when he was sad because the walls of Jerusalem were on fire, the king took notice and said, Why are you sad? It was obvious. He had a certain thing about him that he could tell. And that's what helped him to actually go and repair the walls of Jerusalem. So, my point is that especially as Christians, if God puts us in certain places of work, we're supposed to preach the gospel, and God will put us in certain places. And we may not understand the consequences, the good consequences of the work that we're doing. But if God has placed you there, your work has value. As much value as anything else in the world. If you're teaching the kids on Sunday night, or you're cleaning the church, or you're leading the music, if God has placed you there, it has value. You might not understand, you might not see why this is, but you can rejoice in the fact that it's God's work. It doesn't matter what you see or what you know. Ecclesiastes says, Wherefore I perceive that there is nothing better than that a man should rejoice in his own works, for that is his portion. Who shall bring him to see what shall be after him? And Nehemiah they rebuilt the temple, and they'd been captured by the Persians 150 years before his time. And during that time, the Persian king gave choice to the Jews that they could go live in their own little city. But a few of the Jews stayed living with the Persians, and that would be Nehemiah's ancestors. So, 50,000 Jews went to live, and Nehemiah stayed, and all he knew was this Persian culture. He heard little whispers from his grandparents about the glory of Judah and the glory of Jehovah. He obviously served God, but all he knew was that now there's a new job for him to do, to go and repair these walls, right? And, it doesn't seem super glorious to me to, drink poison or build up walls, but the cool thing about it is 450 years later, after Nehemiah built those walls, he was building them for a purpose. He was preparing the way for the king, for Jesus. Because 450 years later, Jesus walked through those same walls and looked at those walls. And I don't know what he was thinking, but I don't think it's so far-fetched for him to at least honor Nehemiah and said, yeah, you did this. You didn't know what you were doing then, but you were serving me and you rejoiced in that. And that's the best thing that we can do. There's nothing better than that. So that's all I have to say. And now I'll